So, I may not be here for Thanksgiving, but this seems like a good time to talk about it anyway. Thanksgiving, appreciation, giving gratitude, even, and this is also true on the path to God, to be grateful to God. Mind you, in a way, we should not, it's not a question of taking for granted, but we should not be surprised if He does nice things for us. Because, after all, He loves us. Why shouldn't He? In the one hand, in other words, we should expect Him to keep us well, happy, progressing, and giving us the right kind of guidance and so on. We should expect it. Pray believing, as Jesus said. But on the other hand, there should be that sense of closing the circuit, giving the energy back to Him, because it's only then that He can continue. This is again what we're talking about, what I was talking about in May. Closing the circuit. Giving energy back so more can be given to you. And as you do that, this is how a dynamo works. The wheel turns and generates more and more and more electricity. And so, as you give energy to God by loving Him, by appreciating what He does for you, even the smallest thing, then He's able to give more back to you. And as you keep giving it back, more and more comes until finally you become a completely empty vessel for the transmission of these blessings to all men. The way with other people too is to give back to them whatever little bit they put out to you. Give it back, and more will come. You'll draw as you give. This was the point that I tried to get across, and I think successfully, in San Francisco a few weeks ago, back in April, before I went to Europe, and I had everybody at Ananda House come up and bless me. I said, I've blessed all of you for many years, but I would like you to bless me now. I feel this is something that we should do to one another, not necessarily in a formal way, but every time we look at them, bless them, pray for one another, wish each other well, wish each other healing on all levels, physical, mental, spiritual. There's a lot of that kind of consciousness here now, so I'm not really trying to scold you. What I'm trying to do is merely make more dynamic to your awareness a virtue that I have observed a great deal in this community, far more in this community than in most. In fact, one of the lovely bits of feedback that we have gotten again and again and again from teachers or performers of many different types, like Samuel Avital with his mime work, and Andrew Watson with his healing, and Sachdev with his flute, and so on and so on. I don't need to name them all. Again and again, what they say is that this is the most appreciative audience we've ever encountered. Well, that shows spiritual refinement. So you see, I'm not trying to scold, but I am trying to remind and to encourage to go more in that same direction, because here we are getting a little bit far-flung, and there are a lot of people who are off in some little corner working, and we don't even know what they're doing. It would be nice to find out. It would be nice to have enough interest to look into it and know what each person is doing. Be involved to a certain extent in what each other are doing, because it's all for you. Everything that we do is for Ananda. Everything that we do is for the whole lot of us. And if we work in that consciousness that we're all sort of one big team working together, there is so much more power that we can generate. When you have many people all pushing on one thing to get it out of the mud, then of course you can see the result of that push. You don't see the result quite as easily when they don't see one another, when they're off doing many different things. But if we have that consciousness, we will see the results. And this sense of appreciation and gratitude to one another and sharing and family, this is a very, very essential part of what I'm talking about in this other aspect of the subject, that when we can work together, then how can we be hurt? We are bound to succeed. What I'm saying is, let's take the time to relax enough to be friends. Let's take the time to relax enough to be all really in the family together. Really,
we wouldn't have the life that we have without his leadership at the beginning and his direction, and naturally, of course, Masters empowering him and that discipleship. But we too need to carry on in the same vein, as Swami was saying. We need to become master, to become Swamiji for each other and for everyone that we meet. That support, that love, the gifts that we're given to share, as Swami said, complete the circle. In the meditation this morning, I'm sure all of us felt gratitude. That was primarily the purpose of it, to think, to meditate on, to feel what we have been given by the great masters, by God, to feel that and consciously be grateful of that. And that's a very, very important part of the picture, because if we don't awaken that feeling of gratitude, and just like a greedy little child say, gimme, 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 for whatever those things are, and never say thank you for what we have been given, it's not that the mother loves us less, but she'll need to teach us by withholding some things. So it starts with gratitude to God, not for the tangible things, for the intangible things. But then there's the other part of it, too, that closes the circuit, and that's that what we receive from the Masters, be it joy, be it a sense of love, the awakening of gratitude, whatever it is, then that increases to the extent that we share it with others. And so one might say the concentration on God and the gratitude to God, the awareness that we should be grateful, is the receptive part of the cycle. But the active part of the cycle is to give joy, to give support, to give love, to give friendship. Everything that we want for ourselves, we should give that to each other and to everybody else. It obviously can't stop in the tiny little circle of friends that we have at Ananda. But if it doesn't start there, then it doesn't spread from there. You can't drop a stone in a pond and expect the wave to reach the shores all around the pond without it first starting in a small little circle. And so we should be grateful for each other's presence, express that to each other. We should be sharing with each other. And if we all do that together, a great magnetism is produced. And that magnetism can spread the light of God and the great masters and of Swamiji out further and further and further until it reaches the shores of everyone's consciousness in the world. But it all starts with gratitude.
Hearing that beautiful talk of Swamiji, when he mentioned asking people to come up and bless him at Ananda House, this was our first ashram in San Francisco that grew to the work in the Palo Alto. But Jyotish and I were present. There were just a small group of us, maybe 30. And Swami said, it was a very surprising experience. We were meditating with him, and he said, this must have been about, early 80s, I suppose, 1980s. He said, I've been blessing all of you for all these years. Now I want you all to come up and bless me. And it was not an easy thing to do. Why? Because you just felt so unworthy. Well, who am I to bless Swamiji? And I know for me, and I think for everyone, there was a lot of reluctance. But it was a turning point in our lives too, because we realized he was trying to teach us, you all have God within you. Don't just close the circuit. Don't just think that I'm the one that's giving it to you. You need to give it back to me and by extension to everyone. It was a very, very transformative experience. I'll never forget it. And there's a beautiful story that we've shared before about, I don't think it's a true story, but it's lovely. It's the story of a monastery in Europe that had been at one point a great center of spirituality and devotion and dedication. Many, many hundreds of monks had lived there and offered their lives to God. But over time, the spirit diminished. And then there came to a point where there were only 2 or 3 old monks left living in this monastery, which is actually true of most of the monasteries in Europe right now. And the head monk said, oh, we must do something. We can't let this great spiritual center just fall on emptiness. And he heard there was a holy man that lived in the woods nearby the monastery. And he went to see this holy man seeking his advice. And the man said, the holy man listened very patiently, and he said, oh, it's sad to hear your story. I'm so sorry that your monastery is diminishing. And but he didn't give him any advice, and the head monk was kind of disappointed, and he was leaving. And just as he was about to leave the little hut where this holy man lived in the forest, the holy man said, oh, by the way, one of you is the Messiah. And the head monk just thought this was so strange. And he came back and he told all the few other monks remaining what he had said, and they all were puzzled by it, and they went back to their little cells and they began thinking about it, and one of them said, well, I know I'm not thought to himself, I know I'm not the Messiah, but Brother Joseph, he's so holy, he's so selfless, maybe he's the Messiah. And Brother Joseph thought, well, I know I'm not the Messiah, but Brother Elias, he's so serviceful and pure-hearted, maybe he's the Messiah. And one by one, they all thought, I don't think it's me, but maybe it's him. And they began to change how they related to each other. They began to treat each other with reverence and with deep respect. And little by little, the spirit began building, and a light began once more emerging from this monastery. And the young men in the village would come and they would say, could we just sit on your grounds? We don't want to come into the monastery. And the monk said, yes, yes, enjoy the vibration. And more would come. And then a few came forward and said, we feel drawn to this way of life. Can we come and join the monastery? And little by little, over time, the monastery regained its former glory. Well, we're not at a low ebb now, but one of the things we need to be grateful for is the holiness in each other. It's so evident. It's so present. And just to live and reflect that, and by doing that, we draw God's light and we draw the power that Ananda can spread out to the whole world. So let's just live in the spirit of gratitude for our great, great masters, for Swamiji, for Gurudeva, and for this spiritual family in God there are great saints that live here. And don't say, yes, but not me. It's Brother Elias. No, it's not just Brother Elias. You have sacrificed a whole lot to live here. And God is pleased with that sacrifice. And He is drawing you ever closer to Him. So let's have this day be a day of rejoicing for the life in God that we've been given. God bless you. And I also want to thank my dear friends Tim and Lisa for the beautiful plant. A few weeks ago I said, wouldn't it be nice to have a big potted plant up on the dais? It would make it come alive more. And there it was this morning. So thank you. Have a beautiful Thanksgiving, whatever you're doing. And I know we can't have a big get together, but let's feel our connection in God wherever we are.